Hello, and welcome to episode 5 of the Sarah Seams podcast. Hello and welcome. My name is Sarah. I'm the maker here behind the Sarah Seams podcast. I live in Columbus, Ohio with my partner and our 2 cats, Alex and Moo, who will make an appearance on here someday eventually. Today is, what day is it? February 11th. It's Saturday morning. It's a beautiful morning here in Columbus. Sunny. It's cold, but it's sunny. Looking forward to going out a little bit later today, and enjoying that sunshine. Today I'm going to share some finished objects, works in progress. I have a couple of acquisitions at the end, and then I'll be sharing a couple things that I'm loving right now at the very end of the podcast. So I'm just going to jump right in with what I'm wearing. This is my first Lento. I'll stand up so you can see it. So this is the Lento sweater. This is a pattern from Lento magazine, and I am currently participating in the Let's Lento knit along, which is being hosted by Rebecca at the Cacao podcast and Amy Palco of the Meaningful Stitch podcast. And I believe it started in January and it's running through March 5th. So we have a little under a month left, but I'm here to tell you, you could cast one of these on and finish it before March 5th. As I'll show today, I have finished a second one already. But yeah, this was my first one. And the yarn is Camellia Fiber Co. It's their Yak DK base, and the color is chocolate. And I'll just stand up again to show you the details. So you can see it has this double folded collar, which I really like that detail, especially in a more drapey yarn. It gives the collar a little bit more structure. And then it has knit front and back raglan and creases. And I've made mine quite cropped because I'm wearing it over a dress, which is how I like to wear most of my knits. And it has, I would say the sleeve on me is about bracelet length. I knew that this yarn was going to stretch, and so I knit everything a little bit shorter because I was worried I didn't want anything to be too long after I blocked it. But you can see the sleeve, I probably could have had another ½ inch or inch in the sleeve, but I do really like the length that it ended up. I did also have to, the body did end up too short. Sorry, I'm just like ducking into the frame here. But I did have to go back. My bind off ended up a little bit too tight originally, and it was a little bit too short, and I really wanted it to hit me right at my natural waist, so it did have to go back in, take out the binding and add a few more rows of ribbing, but I really like how it looks with the longer section of ribbing. So yeah, that's my Lento. The only thing I would say, and I did try to address this on my second version, is I feel like there's some excess fabric right in the underarm. So like, depending on how I'm standing, you can see it feels like the armhole got a little bit too long after blocking. And again, I think that's, I knitted it to the size specification, and I normally knit like a 9-inch yoke depth, and it was that. But after blocking, I think it probably blocked out closer to about 10 inches. And I do just feel like I've got a little bit of extra fabric in the underarm. It's not gonna prevent me from wearing it. I love this yarn. I cannot recommend it highly enough. I will definitely buy more in the future for a different project. It's so soft, and the silk content gives it this like beautiful shine. It's merino, yak, and silk. And yeah, I really recommend this yarn if you can get your hands on it. So yeah, that is my first, no, it's not my first finished object. This was a finished object last time. This is what I'm wearing. But it does lead into my first finished object, which is my second Lento. So I talked about this a little bit in the previous episodes, that because this is such a quick knit, the great thing about this pattern is the gauge. So it's This one was knit in DK. The second version I'm about to show you was fingering and mohair held together, but you knit it on 6mm needles, so it knits up really fast, and it's a super light, airy gauge. And I think in the DK, you can see it's still a very opaque fabric in the DK. Like, it's not see-through at all. However, this version I'm about to show you, well, let me just show you and then I'll explain. So if you've been here, if you've seen the past few episodes, you've seen me show these amazing hot pink yarns and talk about how this color is so popular right now and how it kind of trickled down from Valentino. And I just talked a little bit more about where the popularity of this color is coming from. But I have finished my hot pink Lento. Oh my gosh, I am so in love with this color. So I knit this like a mad person. Like I think I recorded my last podcast on like the last day of January, and I cast this on that day. I had just finished the one I'm wearing, and I cast this one on, and I finished it in like 8 days. Which is definitely the fastest I've ever knit a garment before. I think it's because it was my second time knitting this garment, so I already knew, you know, what I needed to do, and this color, I just like couldn't get enough of it. And with it being held with mohair, I don't know if you can see the halo on that. It's really fuzzy. It was so fun and addictive to knit. And I got it in my head that I wanted to be able to wear it on Valentine's Day, which is this coming Tuesday. And so I was like determined to finish it. And it just, I mean, once you get through the yoke, it really just flies. So yeah, here's my hot pink Lento. So a couple of things I did to try and address that little fit issue in the one I'm wearing. So the one I'm wearing, I knit size 3 because I was worried I wasn't going to have enough yarn. And then now, of course, I have a whole skein of this yarn left over, which I'll have to use for something else eventually. But it fits, but it's like, it fits pretty well. But I prefer my sweaters a little bit more on the boxy side. So I decided for the pink version, I was going to go up to the size 4, but I was worried again about the yoke depth because this is a superwash yarn. So I cast on the number of stitches for the size 4, and I worked the raglan increases until I got to 8 inches instead of 9 inches. So I just didn't do as many raglan increases as the pattern called for, because I expected this one to grow as much, if not more, than the one that I'm wearing now. So I just shortened the yoke a bit, but then I had to do a little bit of mathing because I didn't have enough stitches for the body if I stopped at that point. So what I did was just split for the body and the sleeves at this point when I had 8 inches in my yoke. And then I looked at the pattern and saw how many body stitches I needed in total for the size 4. And I just added a few increase, you know, when you cast on at the underarm extra stitches to start the body, I just cast on the amount of extra stitches I needed to get up to the size 4 to work the body in the round. And then when I got to the sleeves, I picked up my sleeve stitches, however many there were, I don't remember off the top of my head, with my extra stitches added at the underarm. And then I just rapidly decreased until I got to the sleeve circumference for size 3, because I didn't want the sleeves to be any bigger than the size 3. I just wanted a little bit shorter yoke and a little bit more room in the body. And I feel like that worked out really well. So this one fits more in line with what I was hoping for. Now I will say this one is pretty see-through. Like, I don't know how much, like, you can see the light through it. And I kind of like it. Like, I was like, this is gonna be my Valentine's Day sweater. I'm planning to wear like a little black like bodysuit under it with some black pants. I think it's gonna be very cute. And yeah, I mean, like I said, I normally wear my sweaters over a dress or with a skirt anyway, so I can just pop something under it, and the fact that it shows through a little bit doesn't really bother me. But I think that is a result of the yarn choice. So let me tell you about the yarn. So this is Kelborn Woolens Perennial. Let me see here, I have in my notes. It is 60% merino, 25% Surrey alpaca, and 15% nylon. So this is a pretty light fingering. It's like 460 yards for 100 grams, so it's quite light. And then I did pair it with mohair, which this is the tussock base from Pearl Soho. It is 60% merino, 40% silk in the color Pink Joy. And the color of the fingering weight perennial is just pink. But yeah, I feel like they went really well together. I don't know how well you can see. The fingering weight yarn was like slightly more purple toned, and then the Pink Joy fingering was like a true like hot pink. But I really love the color that they created together. I feel like it's a little bit more neon than it's coming across on camera. It's very bright. But yeah, I love it. It's so soft and just like light as air, which is another great thing about this pattern is it's just super transitional. Like you could easily wear this in the spring or the fall. I mean, you could layer it up in the winter and wear it, but I think it's really a good transitional piece. So yeah, that's my hot pink Lento that I knit in 8 days. And I'll try and wear it on the next podcast. I'll definitely be wearing it this week for Valentine's Day, even though my partner Troy, his absolute least favorite color is hot pink. So unfortunately for him, he's gonna have to sit across from the dinner table on Valentine's Day looking at me in hot pink. But he'll get over it. So yeah, that's my hot pink Lento, which I'm very obsessed with. And I had bought yarn to make a third Lento, which I showed a couple podcasts ago. But after knitting these two, and I would definitely knit more of these in the future, but I think I want to use that yarn for something else. I think I don't have a ton of it because the Lento doesn't use a ton of yarn, but I think I want to use it for like a little slip over vest or something instead of another Lento, but we'll see. We'll see what strikes me. Knit Pro Girl is coming out with 2 versions of her. She did her Simper sweater, which is similar to the Lento. Actually, it's just like a classic raglan. And she did a V-neck version, but she's coming out with slip over versions of both of those. And the V-neck is really cute. So I was thinking maybe I'll use my other yarn for that. So that's my first finished object and my last Lento for now. Like I said, you have plenty of time to still enter that knit along. If you're interested, over on Instagram, it's #Let'sLento. I believe it's going till March 5th. My second finished object, which I actually finished before the Lento, but anyway, this is the Moon River Cable Hat by Sari Nordland. The yarn is Knit Picks Preciosa, which unfortunately I think they might have discontinued. It's a worsted weight, unspun base, 100% merino, and this is just the bare color, so it's undyed. I really like Knit Picks bare. They offer bare in all of their bases, and I really like to have some for socks because if you want just like a classic like white in your socks or slightly off-white, it's a really good option and it's cheaper than the dyed yarns. Anyway, so yes, this is my Moon River Cable Hat by Sari Nordland. I really love knitting this hat. It's very fun. You can see the cables start right from the crown and proceed down to the brim, and then you have a 5-inch knitted 2x2 rib brim. Yeah, I don't, this is my second time knitting this. Oh, and Sari is also hosting a knit along right now. It's her top down hat knit along. That's over on Ravelry. I think you can knit any of her top down hat patterns and be entered for the prizes in the knit along. So yeah, if you're interested in trying out any of her hat patterns, I really love her hat patterns. I've made 3 or 4 of her iris beanie, which is just a simple 1x1 rib beanie that again is top down. I definitely prefer a top down hat, I have to say, having tried both top down and bottom up now. I think with top down, you can make sure you use all your yarn, you know, if, you know, unless that would be like a ridiculous like 10-foot hat or something, but you're not gonna run out of yarn, you know, you can knit from the top down and just keep going until it's the desired length. Whereas like if you're going from the bottom up, I feel like sometimes you run into a little bit more yarn chicken, or like I feel like you can get a better fit with top down because you can try it on. But anyway, yeah, I really like this yarn. It's super soft. I was worried that the cable definition wouldn't be very good with this unspun yarn, but it really is. It looks really good, I think. You get a lot of credit for it. It's very, very soft and warm. So yeah, I don't know that I'll be able to wear it too much more this winter, but next winter for sure. Also, if you follow me on Instagram, when I first finished this, I had made a pom-pom and attached it to the top. And I was very conflicted about the pom-pom. I couldn't decide if I liked it or not. And I wore it around a little bit both ways, and I did ultimately decide to take the pom-pom off. I know a lot of people love the pom-pom, and I agree, it looks very cute with the pom-pom, but I felt like it bothered me when I was wearing it. Like, I'd be walking around and I'd feel the pom-pom like moving around, and I think my pom was a little too dense. I think if I had a cute like faux fur one, or if I just made one that wasn't as like firm, it wouldn't bother me as much. So I do think one of those really cute like faux fur poms would be really pretty on this. So if I can find one of those, maybe next year I'll add the pom back on. But yeah, that is my last FO. I just had those two this week. And now I will move into works in progress. Okay, so I have 3 whips to share with you today. The first one is a pair of socks. Gotta always have socks on the go. So let me show you the yarn first. Okay, so this is the yarn. It is, oh, I'm gonna have to look at my notes here because I'm about to forget this. It is, the company is called 3 Irish Girls, and the color is Desert Turquoise. I believe this is their Adorn Luxe base, and it's a merino blend. I'm sorry, I can't remember the exact blend right now, but I got this at my recent on my recent trip to Chicago. I went to a local yarn store there called Yarnify, and this was kind of local to them, Midwestern dyer, I think in I don't want to say the wrong thing, one of the other Midwestern states. This color also really doesn't show up very well on the camera. It's really a super vibrant turquoise. I did get a new camera, so I feel like it's showing up a little bit better, but that's pretty accurate. It's a really, really pretty color. I really like it. It has very slight variation. It is a tonal from one of their collections. So yeah, this is the yarn. And last time I shared these with you, I was knitting the Lines socks by Rest Knitwear, which is a newer pattern. And it's a really pretty design. It has a 1x1 rib cuff, and then it has little lines that kind of like come around the sock, and they're just like single little knit stitches that come around. And for some reason, I didn't realize, of course, those are made with cabling. They're 1x1 cables. Excuse me. And I had just finished knitting that Moon River cable hat, and I wasn't motivated to work on it. I was trying to teach myself how to do cables without a cable needle, but this is not the right project for that. This is a superwash yarn, and the stitches are so tiny, so like I kept dropping stitches and it just kind of looked a mess, and I kept getting frustrated with it, and I just wasn't reaching for it. And I kind of rely on my socks to be my like easy project I can just pick up and work on without having to think about it, or sometimes even using a pattern, not even using a pattern. So I made the decision to put the Line socks on hold for now, and I ripped back to the cuff, and I decided to knit these as a 3x1 rib instead. So you can see since then I've made a lot more progress on them. So yeah, I kept the 1x1 rib cuff, which is about 1.5 inches. And then I just started a 3x1 rib pattern. I just finished the gusset. So I did a heel flap and gusset. I just finished knitting the gusset, and so now I'm onto the foot. of the first sock. So you can see the 3x1 rib. And I should say these are for my partner, Troy. I knit him a pair of socks at the beginning of the year and he really liked them. So I'm planning to knit him 3 more pairs. So I got this yarn and another yarn that I've shown before from the same company at Yarnify in Chicago. And this is a tonal that is like reflected. That yarn is more multicolored, but it has this color in it. So I'm planning to make these, and then I think I'm gonna make the same style in the other yarn, so another pair of 3x1 rib, and then I'm gonna make some kind of shorties that use both yarns together. So that'll be fun, and that'll be like a nice little set of 3 socks to give him. At this point, it is already starting to get warmer. You know, it's cold today, but it's starting to feel like spring a little bit here in Columbus, so who knows if he'll get to use these this year, but he'll then have a nice little collection of socks going into next fall. So yeah, my first whip. These are just not using a pattern, just these are my vanilla socks, but in the 3x1 rib in this really pretty teal yarn. Always gotta have socks. So hopefully I'll have some significant work done on those before the next podcast, if not done. Okay, my second whip. This is an exciting one. So let me organize myself here. All right, so I believe it was on the last podcast. I shared with you that I had bought a couple skeins of mystery wool from Make and Mend, which is an online art supply store that sells secondhand art supplies, and they have a lot of fiber. And so these are the colors that I had bought. So this one is a navy, and it has some, let's see if I can get it to focus. It has some variation in it. And then this is a lighter, brighter blue. It's pretty light, but it has pops of a brighter blue in it. So I had 2 skeins of the light blue and just this 1 skein of the dark blue. And you can see they've been caked up now, but I didn't know what their content was. I can tell it's wool because it smells very sheepy and it feels very woolly, very rustic. I didn't know how much I had. I didn't know the weight. There was no information on the skeins. They weren't labeled at all. So I did a little mathing, and I cut a yard of each yarn and weighed it on my super accurate little kitchen scale. And then I weighed the skein and divided it by the weight of the single yard to figure out how many yards I had. And then I kind of reverse engineered that. So the 2 skeins of the lighter blue, all 3 skeins were around 100 grams. And each skein of the lighter blue had about 450 yards. So I was thinking this was more of like a DK weight or even worsted just by the look of it. But by weight, it seems to be more of a fingering weight yarn. I would definitely say it's more of a DK, or a sport weight at least. Just, I mean, it's pretty thick. So yeah, so I have almost 900 yards of this light blue. And then interestingly, the dark blue, which also weighed about 100 grams, was only 350 yards. So 1 yard of the light blue was heavier than 1 yard of the dark blue was heavier than 1 yard of the light blue. And this is a thing that's very known in like the fashion industry even, and I'm sure this is known to many people in the crafting industry. Darker dyes are heavier than lighter dyes, and that affects the way that they work up into fabric and the way that they fit. So like if you've ever gone to a store and tried on a pair of blue jeans and a pair of black jeans, you might have noticed that the black jeans fit tighter than the blue jeans, and that's because it requires more dye to dye a fabric a darker color, and it needs to be more saturated, so it's holding on to more dye to maintain that color. So it restricts the flexibility and it makes the weight heavier. So I just thought that was interesting that these skeins that looked exactly the same, one has 100 yards more than the other just because of the weight of the dye. So that's just something to keep in mind, I think, when you're buying heavier or darker colors of yarn or fabric. Like, that color does tend to affect the yarn, unless it's like a naturally dark yarn. Like I know there's some very dark like alpaca out there. But yeah, I just thought that was interesting. This one has 100 yards more than this one. And now it looks like it, but when I first wound them, it didn't. So I was in the last episode showing these and saying I wanted to make some kind of scarf or cowl or little shawl to go with my poppy coat that I'm working on, which I have not been working on in the past few weeks, so I don't have any progress to show on the coat today. But as soon as I said that in the last episode, Savory Knitting, and I'm sorry, I don't know her name, released the pressed flowers cowl. And this is the latest, I'll put a picture of it in the finished cowl. This is the latest in a series of pressed flowers patterns. So she did a shawl and now a cardigan, I think a hat, and now the cowl. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, this is perfect. This is the perfect thing. I wanted some color work to use both of these blues. And it ties back to the coat because these blues are in that coat. So I wanted to have an accessory to wear with my new coat. So I saw the pressed flowers cowl, and I have not tried any of the other pressed flowers patterns, but when I saw this, I was like, it's time, you know? So here's my progress. This yarn is really crunchy. It does not feel very nice right now. It is probably the most like rustic wool I've ever worked with, but I can tell just from the smell of it that it has spinning oil, and I think it will soften up a lot after blocking. At least I'm hoping so, because I want to be able to wear this next to my neck. So yeah, here's where I've got to. So you can see I just started the first pressed flowers motifs. So this is mosaic knitting, and it is my first time doing this color work technique. So I've done stranded color work, I've done striping, I've done intarsia, but this is my first time doing mosaic knitting, and it's so fun. It's so easy. I really, really like it a lot. So for the pattern, I won't share too much because it is a pay for pattern, but you start by knitting, basically where you cast on is the center back, and you knit basically a scarf, and then you sew the ends together, and then it becomes a cowl. So you knit a section of this plain stitch, which is such a nice texture. And this is what the back looks like. So you can see how the color work kind of works. Basically, you knit down and back with one color, and then you knit down and back with the other color. So you're never having to carry the other color along like you do in stranded color work. You just work with one at a time, and then you alternate knitting and slipping stitches. And that's what creates the pattern. So if you haven't tried color work, or you're nervous about stranded color work, I feel like this would be a really, really good project to jump in on, because it's also small. Like it's only like 60 stitches or something like that. That's not exactly right, but it's like something around that. So yeah, so you knit the section of plain stitch, and then you'll knit the flowers, and then another section of plain stitch, and then seam it, and then you have your cowl. So yeah, I just started the flowers, and look how cute they are. I just love this. I feel like you get a lot of credit for the technique, and I really like how these yarns are playing together. So yeah, I am using the navy as my main color and the light blue as my contrast color. I thought about doing it the opposite, since I have more of the light blue yarn, but I felt like you would get more credit for the flower motif if the background was the darker color. So yeah, that's my pressed flowers cowl. It's pretty quick. I knit all this in like the past, I mean, I really haven't been knitting on it that much. It comes along pretty quickly. I feel like that's gonna be really cute, and if I ever get around to finishing my coat, which I will, that'll be really pretty with the coat. So yeah, I'm excited to see some other versions of this. They recommend it with a color changing yarn as the contrast, which is beautiful. I mean, if you've seen all the shawl versions of this and the cardigan versions, it's so, so pretty, but this is what I had, so this is what I'm using, and I think it's gonna be really cute. So that is my pressed flowers cowl, and that is my last knitting FO for the week. I have others, or I'm sorry, FO, whip. I always get those backwards. I have other whips, as you've seen on previous episodes. I just haven't really worked on them in the past couple of weeks, so I just wanted to, these are the things that I've been actively working on, so that's what I'm showing. And my last WIP is my quilting project. So you've probably heard me talk about this on almost every episode at this point, but I am participating in the Omega Quilt Along that's being hosted by Miss Make, who designed the pattern. This is over on Instagram. And I love this pattern. I've had my eye on it ever since it came out. I'll put a picture in so you can see what it will look like finished. And they are hosting a 6-week quilt along right now. And we are in week 2. So this coming week will be week 3. And the first week, we just gathered our fabric, planned it out, and prepared our paper templates. And then this week we were supposed to cut everything and do all the strip piecing. I am making the king size, which is gonna be a feat to finish in 6 weeks. This is a massive quilt. It's absolutely massive. So I got a little bit of a head start and cut out all of my fabrics in week 1. And then this week it's all the strip piecing. So let me show you. Here's one of my strip piece blocks. Again, I'm not going to give too much information about the pattern because it is a pay-for pattern. But here's one of my blocks. So I have to make 80 of these. I have not finished yet. I have not finished strip piecing yet. I am chain piecing, so I do like all of this seam at once, like all in a row for all 80 blocks, and then I do all of these, and then I do all of these. But it's a beast. There's so many blocks. So yeah. So this is Art Gallery Pure Solids. Normally I like to use secondhand fabrics for my quilts, but I did go ahead and buy new fabric for this one because it is going to go on our bed and I wanted specific colors. So I am using, Art Gallery Pure Solids, which I really like because they're very lightweight and they're very cool handed. I really like Kona cotton as well, but Kona cotton is almost the opposite. It's very heavy and it's very warm handed. So I did not think I would be able to manage a king size Kona quilt on my home machine. And even this will be a challenge just because of the size, but at least this isn't as heavy. So yeah, my colors are coconut milk, terracotta tile, sandstone, and desert dunes. And the coconut milk and the sandstone are pretty close, but the sandstone is slightly darker. So I just wanted a little bit of variation. The quilt is designed for a 2-color version or a scrappy version, and I feel like I'm kind of doing like a 4-color version, which I wasn't sure how it was going to look, and I was feeling a little bit nervous about the color placement. Because of the way the blocks are constructed, some things get like turned around, and I just was feeling kind of hesitant about it. So I actually made like a whole digital mock-up of what this was gonna look like when it was all pieced together, just to make sure I liked the distribution of color before I spent like hours and hours and hours working on it. So I will put a little picture in of my digital mock-up, which I made in Adobe Illustrator, which is a kind of expensive program. If I didn't use it for work, I probably wouldn't like subscribe to it, but there are similar programs that you can use online, or there's even like a coloring page included with the pattern. But the reason I felt like that wasn't going to be enough was because, like I said, you put the blocks together, but then things get twisted and turned, and I needed to like actually like digitally assemble the block and like manipulate it in the same way to get the visual of what the quilt was going to look like. Because if I just filled in the coloring page, I'm basically making it look however I want, but that doesn't necessarily reflect like the mechanics of how the block is put together, which maybe this is making me sound like totally crazy. But I did make this mock-up. I'll put a picture in, and I really like it. It's like just random enough, and the color's not really pooling or anything. So all that to say, we're moving forward. So yeah, this is one of my 80 strip piece blocks, and I have to say, I think it looks like bacon. Like, I feel like it just looks like a strip of bacon. And I kind of can't unsee it now. So I still like it, but this is gonna be like the Baconator quilt or something. Like, it's gonna have some kind of ridiculous nickname because I can't unsee the bacon strip now. And you can tell me please if you think I'm crazy, but I see bacon. Anyway. Okay, so that is my Omega quilt. Those are all of my whips, and what's next? Oh, acquisitions. Give me 1 second and I'll be right back with those. Okay, I have a couple of new to me things to share with you all today. The first one is this hay crate. So I might have shown these on here before. I just bought a couple new ones because I have too many whips. So I like to keep my knitting projects in these crates. They are collapsible, so you can see it collapses to just like the height of that base. So if you ever decided you didn't want them all out or need them anymore, they are very easy to store and they're stackable. But yeah, they weigh nothing. They're 100% recycled plastic, and I think they're like $7. Like, they're definitely around or under $10. And they're just really cute. They come in all kinds of fun colors. Like, I have like a light blue, navy, purple, pink, green, and this one is called Powder, which it's like a very light, like tannish pink kind of color. And yeah, I just love these. So when I'm working at home, I kind of just like carry my projects around in these little crates. And then if they outgrow the crate or if I'm traveling, then I move it into a project bag. But I like these because they're just open and they're super easy to grab, and everything I have is in there and it's very visible. So yeah, I do have 6 of these now, and that like fills out all the space on my shelves. So I probably won't be acquiring too many more of these, but they do also make a larger size. So if you need some larger storage, I really like these. The brand is Hay, Hay. I'll put a link to them in the show notes. I just really like them a lot. And my second thing, okay, this was exciting. So I love the Woolen Forest podcast. I believe her name's Maria. She has such a cool aesthetic. Like, she makes really interesting knitwear. She knits a lot of black, which kudos to her because my poor eyes can't handle that. But yeah, I just love her style, love her podcast. And she also makes knitting notions, like charms, and the brand, I believe, is called Forest Charm. And I don't think she'd done an update in a while, but she did recently do an update, and I got on and managed to, I got on immediately and managed to snag a few different notions, which I'm about to show you, but I think she sold out like so fast. So that's awesome to see. Always happy to support another creator in the community. So I just wanted to show you, the stitch markers came in this really cute little bag. I don't know if you can see it. It says Forest Charm, and it has like a little gem. And then I'll show you what I got. So this is probably my favorite set. I don't know if it will focus. So it's a stitch marker and a progress keeper. And the progress keeper has this longer, really pretty like aquamarine gem. And then the stitch marker is these pretty little matching beads. The second one I got is a progress keeper, and this is so pretty. It's like a little amethyst stone, and it has the little gold wire wrapping. It's really pretty. And lastly, I already used these, so they're not on the card anymore, but I got a set of stitch markers, and this was the first one. So it's a little red stone with some little beads, and then that one came with 5 of these little raw sapphire stitch markers as well as a little set. So I was using those in my on my pink Lento, and I really like them. They're beautiful. There's something about just having those like extra special little notions that makes knitting, at least for me, it makes it more enjoyable to have these like beautiful objects that you can, these beautiful tools really that you can use that are like made by another maker in your community. I just love that. So thank you, Maria. I love these. And she also included a card and a tea in the little bag, which I just thought was really sweet. So lovely packaging, highly recommend. And my last thing, if you saw the episode where I shared my Dorney, which was a sweater that I test knit for Rebecca of the Cacao podcast, it's an all over cable jumper. I made that in Durium Natura, their Serrano base, which is their Aran weight, and the color was quartz, so it was like a very light pink. And I really like that yarn a lot. And then they just released a new color called Cacao? I'm not sure. It might be Cacao. I'm literally holding it. Why don't I just look? It's Cacao, like the chocolate. So they released this new color, which is a really rich dark brown. I'll just show it to you. Oh, that's pretty accurate. I'm really having a thing for browns lately. Yeah, so it's a pretty dark brown with some blue, red, more of like a purple undertone. It's so pretty. So this is their Gilead, which is their worsted base, and this yarn is like I love the Serrano, but I think it was a little hard to work with because it's so round and plush, and Aran weight, it was a little hard on the hands, but at the worsted weight, like it is just so squishy. So you can see it's a really round plush yarn. I like this color a lot. I feel like it almost reads as black, and I know I just said I couldn't knit with black. This is gonna be hard for me to knit with, but it's such a pretty color, and I feel like it will just be like a beautiful neutral for me. And I'm planning to make the Yoon sweater by November Knits, which is a fairly new pattern. I'll put a picture of it in. I'm obsessed with this. I love like a really deep split hem on a sweater and a really oversized sweater. So I think the pattern recommends DK and mohair held together, but I'm just going to use this worsted, and I think this will give such pretty definition to all that ribbing on this design, and I cannot wait. I am being disciplined and not casting this on yet because I have 2 other sweaters on my needles right now. One of them you haven't even seen yet, and I really want to work on that, but also because I just applied to test knit Rebecca at the Crayobea's newest design, which is like a all over mesh cardigan. So I want to leave space to work on that before I just cast on something else. Like I said, I only have 6 crates, so that means I can only have 6 whips. So I'm leaving a space for that in case I get chosen to do the test knit, and I will keep you all updated on that. I hope I do, because it's a really pretty pattern, but if not, casting this on. So we have plans either way. And those are all of my acquisitions. So lastly, I just want to share a few things that I'm loving right now. Just take a little drink of tea. So the first thing, and I've seen this popping up all over Instagram, is the knitwear from the movie Banshees of Inisherin, which is a movie I have not seen, but I've read every single article about the knitwear in this movie, and it is nominated for the Best Picture in the Oscars this year, and I would really like to watch it soon. But the knitwear in this movie is beautiful, and it's come out that every single sweater in this film was designed by the costume designer, but it was knitted by a local, I believe, Irish woman. She knitted all of these sweaters for this movie, and they're just absolutely beautiful. And so I'm going to share a link to a link to an article about the sweaters. If you're interested in learning more about this, I was just blown away by this whole process, and I think it's just amazing to see this kind of like focus on knitwear and craft, and this woman specifically, like her talent and ability. And it's so amazing. So this article if you get a chance, check it out, or any of the many articles about this that are out there right now. Highly recommend it. And even if you just want to take a look at the knitwear from the movie, it's really, really awesome. I can't recommend the movie yet because, as I said, I haven't seen it. But the knitwear I can recommend. Second thing is a recipe. So I've made this many times. I really like it. I'm bad at breakfast. Like I'm curious. I'm always curious about like people's like breakfast routine. I'm terrible at breakfast. Full transparency, I frequently will just eat like peanut butter for breakfast. Like I'm so bad at like making breakfast. So sometimes I'm like, okay, I'll bake something this weekend and then I'll like eat that thing for breakfast all week. And I like to do that with this recipe because then I feel like I'm at least eating like real food for breakfast. I think I'm just lazy in the morning. It's like if I can't like grab it and it's already ready, I'm probably not gonna eat it. Anyway, so this is a recipe for lemon poppy seed pound cake. This is a New York Times recipe, so it is behind a paywall, but I'll try to find a similar recipe to link if you don't have access to New York Times Cooking. And it's very, very easy to make. You just mix everything together in a bowl and bake it, and then you put a glaze on it. It's super, super tasty, and it keeps really well for like up to a week. So I've made this a few times, and something about the lemon makes me feel like springy. Like it brings a little bit of like light. I feel like I am just ready for spring, if you can't tell. So yeah, I recommend that recipe. And then the last thing is I'm just enjoying planning for a party that we're hosting next weekend. We have been talking about hosting a progressive euchre party for like years, but now that we've moved into a house, we have the space. So euchre is a popular card game in the Midwest of the United States. I'm sure people play it in other places too, but I know like when I lived in New York for a while, no one had ever heard of it. So I do think it's very popular in the Midwest. And a progressive euchre party is where you invite a bunch of people and you have multiple tables and everyone rotates around and like gets a chance to play with all different partners. And then at the end of the night, there's like a winner. So yeah, so we're hosting that for next weekend. I think we're gonna have like 20 some people and it's gonna be really fun. And I'm also making a big dinner for it, like a bunch of food. So yeah, I'm just enjoying that, gearing up to start doing some prep for that this weekend. And it's just nice to be able to get everyone together and like do these kinds of activities again. So I'm just looking forward to that. And that is all I have for you today. Let me know, are you making a Lento? Are you participating in the Omega Quilt Along? Any other quilt alongs? I'd love to hear what you're working on. But that's gonna do it for me today. I will be back. And I feel like I've been recording these about every 10 days to 2 weeks. That seems to be a sweet spot for me. So yeah, until then, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe, tell your friends, you know, do all the YouTube things. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time. Bye.